The Thanksgiving play is on Broadway this spring. It's a new comedy satire from Native American playwright Larissa FastHorse. And in fact, she's now the first Native American female to have a play produced on Broadway. Here's Beth Stevens with another edition of Building Broadway.
Thanks, Tamsin. Playwright Larissa FastHorse is making her Broadway debut with the Thanksgiving play, a satirical comedy that skewers the mythology of the holiday. I spoke with her at the Hayes Theater. So you grew up in South Dakota.
Yes.
And now you're on Broadway. How does it feel to be on Broadway?
It feels amazing to be on Broadway. It's really exciting. It's very busy, as you see. There's a lot of people around. It's because it's something that I didn't understand what it was even growing up. Like I said, I thought it was like a street named Broadway, and then all the theaters on that was street. I didn't realize how huge Broadway is as far as, expansiveness and reach and everything. And now it's just really exciting. I really had a goal to be on Broadway. I really did want to be the first Native American female playwright on Broadway, and as far as we know, I am. I'm sure there probably were others that we just aren't aware of, but of the first one we know, it meant a lot to me to do that and to be able to say I was that woman.
This play has been produced a lot.
Yeah.
Not on Broadway until now.
Nope.
Why do you think it's speaking to so many different kinds of people?
It's a comedy, right? I mean, so it's a comedy within a satire, but it's very heavily a comedy, and I think we all need that desperately. And I do not say this tritely at all. I lost people during COVID in my family, but I think after that experience, we desperately need to be side by side with real humans like I am here, and we need to be able to laugh together. And then I think we also do want to think about things, and I think the play is definitely landing differently now since the last couple years than it did before that, and we've really updated a lot of it forward with Broadway because of that.
You have committed so much of your career to telling the stories of Indigenous people, and here we have a show with 4 white people.
Yes.
Tell me about that decision.
Yeah, it honestly was a strategic decision. Originally, I was having a really hard time getting my plays produced more than once because I did have Native American casts, and people kept saying they were uncastable. I know that's not true. Many of us knew that wasn't true, but I just couldn't seem to break through that barrier. So I gave myself the challenge of writing a play about 4 white presenting people that still deal with all the issues of contemporary indigeneity that I'm experiencing and that people in my community are experiencing. First it was a challenge. I was kind of upset, but once I wrote the play, I loved the play. It really says all the things that I wanted to say, and it deals with the issues I wanted to deal with, but just with these 4 beautiful people.
Is it meaningful for you to be here at the Hayes Theater?
Yeah, the Helen Hayes especially, because one, it's a theater name for a woman, but also I had my husband take my picture in front of this theater years ago, in front of the little theater, just because I love it. And I was like, if I was going to have a play on Broadway, this is kind of the perfect space. And I just love the size of it. There's enough people, but still intimate. No seat is too far away. And I was like, this is the perfect spot for one of my plays. And here we are.
Well, let's go inside and check it out.
Okay, let's do it.
And here we are.
I know, welcome to our set.
So we're in a classroom, and this whole play is set in a theater classroom.
Yes.
But you just said that you thought of Broadway as a street,
Yes.
which makes me think that you didn't have a lot of theater training growing up.
No, I didn't. I was a classical ballet dancer in my first career, so I was worried about ballet studios and pliés. I was not a theater person at all growing up. I was around theater. All my friends were in theater, so because I was the only one that wasn't, I ran the concession stand. So I saw all the plays they were in, but it was not something that I did.
So what was the germinal idea for this play?
Ooh, yeah, so this play was, after I gave myself that challenge to, make it with 4, non-Indigenous people, I then had to think, well, what is it that is something honestly beloved, something we all know that feels very American in a lot of ways that also pertains to Indigenous issues, and Thanksgiving was just obvious. And so I started doing research on Thanksgiving and thinking about the world I work in, which is mostly a liberal, well-meaning group of folks, and predominantly white still. And I started thinking about, well, what are the things they're struggling with? What are the things I'm struggling with them? And then how do we wrap all that around this really recognizable moment, which is Thanksgiving?
You're not just sending up these well-meaning people, you're also sending up Los Angeles actors and actors in general. And so tell
Writers.
me about, writers, everything, because they're trying to create a play about Thanksgiving as for well-meaning white people. So tell me about poking holes in that mythology around the holiday.
Yeah, I mean, my goal in this too is that it's, even though it's kind of written for my more white liberal colleagues to maybe do some looking at themselves and why they express themselves the way they do, but also is meant to be fun. So I want it to be something that everyone can laugh at, and everyone can laugh at each other. Nobody gets away from this play without being laughed at in some way. And so then taking that into this holiday was fun too, because then I got to bring all these different points of view into Thanksgiving. We tend to think of just the one version with the Pilgrims and the Indians and this happy thing. But there's also people, as I learned, all over the country that celebrate Thanksgiving very differently and at very different dates and very different times, and people have different perspectives if you're Indigenous or not, et cetera. And so it was really fun to be able to take all of that and just wrap it into this one basic topic.
What's the message that you baked into this cake?
All of my plays, I say that they're one-act plays, and I say the first act happens here in the space on the stage like this. The second act happens after you leave. And if there isn't a second act, then I've failed at my goals as a writer. I want people to leave, thinking and questioning and wondering why they didn't know some of these things, why they're offended by some of these things. I want people to really be questioning, like, why is this new information? There are parts of the Thanksgiving play that we tell very accurately. And it's funny because some people are like, oh, you're so harsh. I was like, no, we're just telling the truth. And if you think the truth is harsh, this is, think about that. Why do you think just hearing the truth is too harsh when it's what happened?
The interstitial moments in this play are hilarious, but it sounds like you did a few YouTube dives.
Yeah, I went online and I started researching Thanksgiving things for children, because this is a classroom that we're in, an educational space, and I was horrified. I mean, all of those scenes that you see in the play and all of the comments are all directly from the internet within the past, 6-7 years. We're still teaching children some pretty frightening pageantry and songs and things around Thanksgiving that we should not be teaching them.
You're writing so many comedies.
Yeah.
Tell me where this comes from in your background.
From being Native American, for sure. Indians always say, you gotta laugh or cry. We're living like the longest, dark comedy in history, and we're still here and we still survive, so we have to laugh about it. And then that's just like base level Native American culture at this point. We always say you get two Indians together, you'll know where they are because of the people laughing really loud. So it's just natural.
So for people who don't know, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? You're Lakota.
Yeah, my birth mother is from California, and so I was born there, but was only there a few months. And my birth father brought me back to South Dakota, where my tribe is from. I'm from the Sicangu Lakota Nation, which is, the government calls us the Rosebud Sioux tribe, but that's our name for ourselves. And then I was adopted when I was about a year old as an open adoption. My parents had known my birth father and his family for a while. And so I lived on a border town and grew up in South Dakota. So even though my adopted parents were white, they really were careful to be sure that they kept elders and indigenous presence in this case, Lakota presence in my life, growing up, and made sure I always had access to that part of myself and my culture.
I read that you call yourself a translator, and I love that because I think that that's what these people are failing at. Let's put it out, trying and failing. And also, I think that your audiences are probably mostly not Native American, especially on Broadway.
Yeah.
So tell me about translating.
It's hard when you're growing up, being raised off the reservation and farther away from my family, my birth family. There's a lot of pain in that, actually, as far as, my parents are amazing and wonderful and we're so close and they gave me everything. But, culturally, I always felt like I wasn't enough. I wasn't enough Lakota. I wasn't fully white. I was just kind of in between. And that was kind of hard when I was young. But now, as I've grown up, I've realized that that's my superpower, that I can translate. I'm sort of a bridge between contemporary indigenous culture and white culture, basically, which is unfortunately still what most of theater is, as you said. So I can take those experiences and translate them for each other and show them in a way that works on a stage like this and Broadway.
Do you feel that certain lines land differently with different people?
Oh, absolutely, and they're intended to. You know, I have lines in there that are specifically for my Native American folks, and when that line comes up, I can say, oh, there they are. I hear you, you know, because I hear them laughing, I know where they're sitting. There's certain lines that are definitely for like your educators or for your theater people or for people that want to laugh at educators and theater people, you know. There's definitely specific jokes that hit harder with certain audiences, but then I also have certain jokes, like the very first joke is what I call the unifying joke. It's the very first joke of the show. Within the first minute or two, couple minutes, is a unifying joke that has nothing to do with race, socioeconomic status, education, theater, whatever. It's just a really funny joke, and so that we know that it's all a safe space to laugh together.